When you enable and empower individuals, there's no telling what they can do. The potential is just so enormous. One of the challenges is getting everyone to see what you see and that it's okay, the water's fine, come on in. We can do this together. How everybody thinks differently, but that we can leverage each other's thinking to get to a better place. Anything can be accomplished. You can create anything in the right environment. A lot of organizations say they want change. They really don't want to let go of what they know either.
Can you imagine the success companies can have by enabling and empowering teams to work together? Welcome. I'm your host, Terry Yoffe of Try Coaching. Today's episode features Nadine Karp Mchugh, who lets us in on how her purpose and passion comes down to believing we are all born to create. And she lives this belief every day by creating productive change, digital and organizational transformation, and developing teams to drive sustainable results. Nadine is an iconic and outstanding media and marketing executive that has spent her entire career making a difference to those companies that she worked with by providing impact and value. Welcome, Nadine Karp Mchugh. Well, I have to say, I have known Nadine a very long time, but we're both 12, so that's okay. We got started early. Nadine, to me, is totally the iconic and acclaimed woman in the marketing, digital, whatever else. That's Nadine. Welcome, Nadine.
Thanks, Terry. I'm so excited to be here with you finally.
So, Nadine, what got you to where you are today? How did you get here?
Well, that's a big question. So I'll break it down into pieces. I think it started, though, but I do actually want to go back because I love to credit my dad, who had 3 daughters, was very traditional. He was first generation Eastern European, so very traditional. I think the story may have been different if he didn't have 3 girls, but he did. And he used to come home from work, and I was usually the one home because I was the youngest. And in hindsight, I realized that he probably wasn't happy doing what he was doing, but he had to make a living because he had a family to feed. And, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. So he would come home and he would ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would say different things. It didn't really matter. But what was consistent was his answer to me was always his reply. You could be anything you want to be as long as you work hard. So make sure you pick something that makes you happy. And that was sort of my guiding light through my entire career. I always listened to my gut. I encouraged other people to listen to their gut. I found that when I didn't, I got in trouble. So I learned to really leverage my gut, intuition. Of course, I worked very hard as well. And I decided early on that I wanted to be a writer. So I was very creative. I was making up stories and telling stories and writing poetry at a very early age. And when I told him that I wanted to do that, I got the opposite reaction, which was, how are you going to make a living? You're going to be starving, da, da, da. So I kind of chickened out and I ended up going into communications. I found media. And thankfully for me, I was a little bit different than the typical media person because I had to understand what the numbers meant. I wasn't necessarily a math person. I was really an English person. And so I was really looking at the insights and what everything was telling me, all of the data. So that actually put me in a great position when technology came around, because technology made media and creative much more closely related. You could create anything that you could think of, basically, with the power of technology. And so that was one of the things that sort of awakened my drive for driving, productive change, for looking for the white spaces for competitive advantage. It was looking for those nuggets that really were going to make a difference for one business versus another. And I was lucky enough to work on some really great businesses through my agency career. I think I worked on everything but booze and hotels. So everything else was within my purview at one point or another. So, and not that I oppose either of those. I love to travel, but it wasn't meant to be. And then I got promoted and I was running a major piece of business. And the the client at the time, as soon as I got on the business, it was always a knack. As soon as I got on the business, the client changed or something changed, you know? So I had a new client. She wanted to shake things up. She told me that we were an old-fashioned buying agency and she wanted big, bold ideas that penetrated the culture. And so I literally had to work with the team. I remember the first meeting I had with them where we sat down in a big room. There were 100 of them. It was a really big account. And I told everyone, okay, this is the new mantra. This is the vision. These are the goals. And you could look around the room and you could see people's faces. And it was about a third of the folks were frightened. You know, they were the traditional media folks. They didn't want change. It was that sort of, I don't see you, I don't hear you. This makes me very uncomfortable. They were looking down. They wouldn't engage. Then there was about a third of the room that was so excited that they were ready to like run out of the room and start this new body of work before I even had all the words out of my mouth, because they could see what I was seeing and where we needed to go. And they were really the champions that helped sort of drive the change. The majority were in the middle. And those people in the middle were kind of like, I'm not sure, but I see that you're excited. So I'm going to get excited along with you. I'll go for the ride and then we'll see how it goes. And it was very satisfying to see most of those people sort of come along for the ride. And what I saw was when you enable and empower individuals, there's no telling what they can do. The potential is just so enormous. And it was really satisfying to create that change, to deliver big, bold ideas to the client that drove results. Some of those programs are still in place today. And to watch people on the team really develop and help nurture that sort of inner spirit within them, so that and many of them, that was an amazing team. Many of them went on to really great jobs, really great roles, of fabulous careers. And so it was a terrific time. That kind of awoke in me this drive for productive change. There's stats out there that say, which is interesting, that only 20% of people are change friendly and 50% sit on the fence. So if you look at my example that I just told you, I actually saw that to come into play in real life. And there's another study that said only 1 in 3 people rather would avoid change if they could. That's a lot of people, considering we live in a state of constant change in our worlds. So it's staggering. So that sort of started me. And then I went back and I got my master's degree in organizational creativity and change leadership, because I was so passionate about this. And I wanted to have the street creds as well as the models and the frameworks to use to help more teams, more people be able to realize that they can change, they can evolve into whatever they want to be, businesses, people, so that they can realize the potential, be very successful. And I've used that throughout the rest of my roles in corporate America, driving teams, moving from traditional to digital, creating new organizational frameworks, team development, individual leadership development. So I'm pretty proud of that. And I did most of the work when I was at a company running some global activity, going back and forth on planes. So there's a lot you could get done on a trip to South Africa. It's like a 15-hour plane ride. But I was so passionate about it, I wanted to make sure that I got that done.
This is amazing. And there's just so much here. But I love the part of change. But isn't it interesting? And even today, how people are so not willing to make changes, where years ago, when you got started, when I got started, even though we were in different fields and different areas, change wasn't as accepted as it is today. Meaning you can understand, like you said, your father, he didn't love his job, but he had no choice. He wasn't going to think about making a change today. And it's true. So many people. And what I wonder, if it's more older people or younger people that are fearful of change. And it's all about fear of, I've got a job, it's steady, I get an income, which is a very old mindset. As today, if you don't change, you're stuck.
That's right.
You don't have the opportunity to put yourself out there and to see what you can do with creating change within yourself. It's very scary. I work with people on that all the time. That's part of what I do. People are very fearful. So what are your thoughts about that?
So I have a lot of thoughts about that. First of all, I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's an attitude. So if you just look at a lot of the people out there right now, I mean, there are second and third acts for the mature generation. I think they're even less afraid. If I had to have an opinion about it, I don't have any facts around that. But if you think about it, they've been through so much. They know that there's really nothing to be afraid of, right? Because you could always pivot. It's really more of the attitude of believing that you can that I think gets in people's ways. And I think that's, one of the reasons why I really wanted to go back and I did the work in the master's program is because there are actually frameworks that are available to help people think through change, to interrogate problems and come up with different solutions, to think in an open-ended way versus in a closed-ended way. One simple technique, and you'll hear a lot of creative problem solvers do this, is instead of saying yes, but say yes, and, right? What happens when somebody, and I actually, in one of my leadership roles, I told people they were not allowed to say yes, but, and we would catch each other. And if we did, we had to reframe it. Because when you use yes, but, and there's research behind this, basically what you're telling somebody is, I didn't hear anything you said. I was just waiting for you to stop talking so that I can now tell you what you should do, which is not a way to collaborate, right? Yes, and forces you to actually listen to what the person is telling you because you're building upon what they said. And so it's a whole different way of thinking, of collaborating, and of helping to get to different and unique solutions. And look, our world is being built on different and unique solutions. Everybody talks about AI. We need to take control of the new technology so that we're driving that future and it's not driving us. And the only way to do that is to sort of embrace new ways of thinking and doing. When I was at another organization, I created what we called the Think Differently workshop. And it was all about taking these frameworks and enabling, empowering individuals and teams to recognize how everybody thinks differently, but that we can leverage each other's thinking to get to a better place. So I think it's an attitude, and I think that attitude can be cultivated with the right tools.
I love yes, but versus yes, and. Actually, one of the speakers at one of my ICF group meetings talked about that. This is years ago, and I have been doing that ever since. And when I speak with clients, that's one thing I say to them: expand your horizons. It's yes, and. So there's your arm around them, collaborating, versus yes, but. That stops somebody right there.
Yes, they don't feel heard because you know what? They're not being heard.
No, not at all. And that's great. I love that. You have done so much. And I love that one of the things you talk about is building teams that collaborate, teams that work together versus anything else. What is your thoughts on how you bring teams together? Because teams together make things happen versus teams that don't work together probably don't make things happen.
Absolutely. I think that the culture is super important. And if you're working in a culture that isn't great, then you could create a subculture within that culture, which I've done several times. The important thing is that the team knows that they're there for each other, that they have each other's backs. You have to establish that trust, right? So make sure that people feel like they can raise their hand. I had this happen once. It was a great example of how the team worked together. One of the team members came into my office almost like hyperventilating because she just had too much going on and she was afraid she wasn't going to get it all done. I said, all right, let's break it down. So we broke it down. I helped her prioritize and everything. And there was still a lot. It was still apparent that we needed more hands on deck. So I called the rest of the team in. This was an in-house team. So it was probably, I called in the people that could help. There were probably about 6 people in the room. So it was the leaders. It wasn't the more junior people. It was the people that could help really drive the work. And we went through it and people just started raising their hands. I could take that one. I could do this one. And then for the rest of it, we all sat in a room one night. I ordered pizza and we got it through it. I think one of the things I've always done anyway as a leader is, and my teams knew this, I would roll up my sleeves and help. I would write decks. I would edit decks. They have to kind of know that you're in it with them as well, and that you're not just sort of leading from up here. But I think that kind of what I liked about that team dynamic was, one, the person was not afraid to come in and say, I can't do all of this. I think oftentimes if there's fear and not trust, you're not going to get an individual that comes in and raises their hand and says, I can't get it all done, because they're going to be afraid of being judged negatively for that. And then they had, I had the other leaders come in, and because there was so much goodwill and trust among the team, there was no judgment among them either. It was, I genuinely want to help get this done. It was truly a one for all mentality. And then everyone felt closer for it. It was almost a bonding experience by the end of the evening. So we will, you can laugh. I like to laugh. I like a little bit of humor. You have to also kind of inject that a bit too. So people realize nothing is the end of the world. Nothing is insurmountable. You can get through it all.
That's what creates an excellent leader, really. And you are so known for that, truly.
Thank you.
You are so known for that. And let's face it, in the business world, reputation is everything, everything. And if you don't have that, you will never go far in anything. And true, we all know crappy leaders, and that's what sets someone apart. Leadership, servant leadership, that you create teams of people that want to work together. It's a culture growth mindset rather than a toxic culture. This episode is brought to you by Try Coaching. Today's competitive business landscape is making it tougher than ever to be at the top of your game, and it may be time to rethink your strategies and approaches. As a certified executive, career, business, and communications coach, I help clients unlock their potential to greater growth, thereby allowing them to become the best version of themselves. You can learn more about me at trycoaching.com. Did you know that every successful person has had a coach? Why not you? Why not now? Let's start a conversation.
Yes, I feel really passionate about this because, I think we've all over our careers, have experienced both. And I have seen what can happen, how you can tap into individual and team potential by creating the right kind of environment. I really feel strongly about this. I feel so strongly about this that now that I'm in this new part of my career, one of the things that I'm doing is formalizing my coaching and mentoring experience into becoming a certified coach by the end of this year. So, because I really believe that by helping to cultivate and empower current and future leaders, we can make corporate America a stronger, more competitive place that's going to drive the future success. Anything can be accomplished. You can create anything in the right environment. So the leadership skills, the team dynamics is really important to make sure that we do compete. And in a world that's moving so fast, you really need to make sure that you're comfortable in that complexity and you're confident to move forward in the right ways. So I couldn't agree more.
I'm wondering if you could gather all the leaders and talk about all of this to them, because today employees want what you offer. They no longer want the yes, but leaders, the ones that aren't willing to listen, to be kind, all the emotional intelligence part. of being a leader, which has not happened in the past for a long, long time. And I had a client a while ago that was great at her job, really great. She was called on the carpet for her behavior as a leader. And we had to look at what was the problem, what stopped her. And we did. But it was interesting that they were going to let her go because of how she led her team.
I hear that a lot, actually. I'm working with somebody right now in a coaching capacity that is truly motivated on the fast track, going above and beyond, working all sorts of crazy hours. And all of a sudden, this person is dealing with a toxic boss who's bringing a lot of her personal issues into the workplace. And now they're considering a new career. It's just a few weeks from one attitude to the other. So leaders can really make or break somebody's time, how much they produce, and their career trajectories, really. So, we're working through that and trying to, obviously I'm not going to get into the more details of that, but yes, I see it too. And it's just an amazing how quickly a situation can turn for an individual if they don't have the right tools in place to be resilient during those times.
A guest I had on my show not long ago talks about trauma-informed leadership and how people bring their childhood wounds.
Absolutely.
Not good enough pandemic, which is happening because all my clients have a thread running through them of not worthy, not valuable, not good enough. It's an epidemic. And if those are not addressed, they take it, especially if you become a leader, they take those wounds to their leadership.
Yes. And corporate America this is why I'm so passionate about it. Corporate America can be a melting pot for that, right? So imagine you put everybody's trauma in one place, and then you're trying to navigate and drive great business results. You're trying to develop leaders. I think it's really important to create a culture of worthiness and celebrate what everybody brings. So yeah, I think that's I actually heard that podcast. I thought it was super interesting, and I'm kind of interested in that space long term because I do believe it needs to be addressed. But I have seen people rise above that in the right environments to really, and it's so satisfying when you can nurture teams and leaders to bring out their personal best, to drive those levels of transformation. Yeah, and I think we need that. We desperately need that. The world needs it. United States needs it. And I think individuals to have personal satisfaction day to day need it.
For sure. And here you are, ordinary person like me, really doing extraordinary deeds.
Oh, well, thank you. Trying.
That's what we need because we're all just people, individuals. We're not
That's right.
Well-known celebrities who are out there doing the kind of work that you're doing, for sure. I'm doing different things and are making a difference. We need that, certainly. So talk a little about what were some of the challenges you had in your career?
The challenges, I think it's bringing people along. I think that I have never been one to shy away from change. If we go back to the stats we talked about, I actually love that. I love to figure out, to me, it's like a puzzle, and you're putting different puzzle pieces together to create something new. I think that some of the challenges have been to bring people along, to foster those kinds of environments. Nothing was ever built in a day. It takes time. I just started, my consultancy is called Evolve Up, because to me, I always told people on my team, it's an evolution, not a revolution. When you do things purposeful, you measure things along the way so that you're seeing the results. And so some of that has been a heavy lift because while a lot of organizations say they want change, they really don't want to let go of what they know either. And so you're sort of caught in this middle ground, trying to bring them along. And sometimes it feels like a heavy load. One of the things I can't emphasize enough is for people not to be afraid to think differently and to stretch. That there's some, while it could be, initially you're scared or you have that inner voice saying, talking you down, that inner critic. I call mine Bad Dean because she really gets on my nerves and I just tell her to back off when she starts. But I've actually named her to get out so that you could sort of identify it and then it gets pushed out. But I think we have to sort of push our inner critics down and not be afraid of thinking differently and stretching, because that's where the magic happens, not only to deliver better at work, but really to feel good about what you're putting out there in the world. So for me, it's the I think one of the challenges is getting everyone to see what you see and that it's okay. The water's fine. Come on in. We can do this together. Yeah. And the models and the frameworks help, because when people can see how their roles integrate into what you're trying to do or their work streams, it's easier. People need a roadmap.
Absolutely. And I talk to clients all the time. Let's put a roadmap together of what you want. And change, it's such a scary word. And yet, because people go to the negative. Oh my God, what if I fail? What if I'm vulnerable? What if? And then I say, what if it works? What if things go great? Or who told you couldn't do this? What's stopping you from doing this?
That's actually a technique of looking at what's stopping you and digging deeper into it, because then you can counter each one to say, okay, well, how is that really bad? What can you do about it? What would be the resistors? What would be the assisters in that? Who can help you? What are the other key stakeholders? So that's actually a great technique to sort of combat the naysayers or in your head. Yeah, I think that moving forward, we're not going to have a choice. Change is afoot. It's not going anywhere. Our worlds will continue to change. We need to embrace it, and we need to get into the driver's seat so that doesn't happen to you, but you help drive how it's going to happen. I think that's really important.
Oh, goodness. So you've been here, we've talked. What do you want your legacy to be?
Yes, I have. I'm in this transitionary period also where I'm parallel pathing. That's the new career of the day. They say most people will get to a point in their career where they start having a parallel approach. So I'm doing that right now. And it's all about driving productive change, whether I'm working as a consultant or strategic advisor or on a board of a company, helping to navigate through the change to drive success, or working with individuals and teams, doing workshops, executive coaching to help them realize their potential and how to get to those high functioning teams that we just discussed, so that corporate America could be a healthier place. And we as, a country, as an industry, will be more productive, because if we can help the right leaders have the right attitudes about themselves and also the teams that they are leading, anything is possible in any organization. And so I would like to be a small portion of helping to drive that change in the world.
How would you define your purpose, your mission in life?
So for me, it's always been about driving impact and value. I need to contribute. And that's why this whole idea of productive change to me is very satisfying, because in order to drive impact and value, you need to look for those white spaces that we talked about earlier. You need to look for where you can drive competitive advantage. I've worked in many companies and I've worked for clients that were looking to box above their weight. There was always a competitor that was doing better, that had greater share. You can't keep doing the same thing that you always did, and you can't do what they're doing because you can't afford it. And so where are those insights that drive to that white space that's going to help you have competitive advantage? To me, that's about driving productive change, about driving impact and value. And that's been the most satisfying for me.
As Marshall Goldsmith said, what got you here won't get you there. For sure, that's about change. So I want to ask you to tell us a little about your new business, Evolve Up.
Yes, thank you. So I purposely named my new LLC, Evolve Up, because of, evolution implies improvement, right? Where you have to keep improving if you're evolving. And the true definition is taking something from a simpler form to a more complex form. I find that really interesting. I find that really exciting. It speaks to driving productive change, providing impact and value, both to businesses that I work with, or if I'm on a board of a company, as well as becoming an executive coach, mentoring and advising leaders and team, on themselves and team dynamics. And that includes workshops. I mentioned that I did the Think Differently workshop. So it's all about that space of productive transformation. I have a lot of experience in organizational and digital transformation. And I've been, over the past 30 years running teams of hundreds of people. I've mentored and coached, let's just say hundreds. Otherwise, it goes back to how I said 30 years, so you have an idea. And it's always been one of the most satisfying things to take teams and individuals to the next level. So that's what we're going to do at Evolve Up. We're going to work on transformation, on evolving businesses and individuals as well.
So if somebody wanted to contact you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, I think the best way now, because our website is a work in progress, is to go onto LinkedIn and just DM me. And I'd love to have a conversation about how we could work together, learn from each other, etc. So I'm very excited about the future. I'm really happy that I get to work on the parts of the world that I'm very excited about. I think with passion drives success. I've always been very passionate. I tried to be very passionate. Going back to what my dad said about being happy, I was always passionate in the roles that I chose to take. And I'm really excited about bringing this forward and working with businesses and individuals to drive productive change.
I'm going to end with Nadine is such an example of if you work with passion and purpose, your work can become extraordinary. That's my tagline. And that truly embodies what Nadine does. Works hard, extraordinary work is the outcome. Nadine, I wish we could sit here longer. It has been a pleasure and honor. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you, Terry. It was my pleasure.
I'm hoping that this compelling and extraordinary conversation with Nadine Karp Mchugh has offered you thoughts on how you can create your own changes by making choices that matter to you. Reviews are important as it encourages people to listen to my podcast. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for joining the conversation. For related content on extraordinary work, please visit my website, trycoaching.com. And always remember, when you work with passion and purpose, your work can become extraordinary. Do you know how to handle narcissists and high conflict individuals in the business world? Meet Rebecca Zung, nationally recognized attorney, master negotiator, high conflict expert, and best-selling author of Slay the Bully, How to Negotiate with a Narcissist and Win. In our next episode, you can learn more about the behaviors and mindsets of narcissists and strategies for dealing with them.